Hey, well, I know this isn't my usual type of video, but honestly, there's just been something really bothering me. See, about a month ago, YouTube had this recommendation for me, Mazda new engine shocks the entire industry by Scotty Kilmer. I'm like, whoa, Mazda new engine shocks the industry and I haven't heard about it? That's some crazy stuff. And apparently Mazda also shocked the entire industry nine months ago, according to Scotty Kilmer. And then again three months ago, according to Scotty Kilmer. And Car Addiction says they shocked the entire industry 2 months ago. I haven't heard of any of these shocks. But so I watched this video and oh my god, it's a piece of work. In fact, I was compelled to leave a comment. I almost never do this. There's so much incorrect information in this video, it's not even feasible to correct it. It's just safer to consider everything in the video wrong and to proceed from that assumption. So you know what? Let's watch this video. And I'd just like to point out that Scotty Kilmer has 5.92 million subscribers and 800 views on this video alone from September 8th. So let's fire it up here.
Mazda will bring it back, and not just as a range extender.
Wait. Start it over. Okay, here we go.
It's found inside the Mazda RX-7, RX-8, and the 787B race car. It emits terrible emissions.
Okay, wait. So it's only found in 3 cars? What about the RX-2, 3, 4, 5, the Repu, the Prinz, the Cosmo, probably some that I'm forgetting? So he couldn't just Google Mazda Rotary cars and before making this video.
It consumes a lot of oil. I'm talking about the rotary engine, and today I'll give you a sneak peek into Mazda's latest patent that indicates Mazda will bring it back. And not just as a range extender. And hang tight, hear about their 12-rotor engine that was made recently.
Wait. A 12-rotor engine was made recently? Mazda made a 12-rotor engine? I haven't heard about this. I'm sure he's going to get back to that. Okay.
Rotary engine is quite unique from piston engines. You may have heard the word wankle.
Whoa. Okay, wait, let's go back a bit.
Rotary engine is quite unique from piston engine.
That is not a Mazda Rotary engine. I'm not sure what design that is, but it's a rotary design I've seen before. It is not Mazda, so to insinuate that Mazda seems kind of wrong.
You may have heard the word wankle associated with rotary engines. Here's why. The Wankle rotary engine was named after its inventor, Felix Wankle. He was just 22 years old when he conceived it, and 27 when he won his first patent. That was back in 1929.
I don't know if that's correct. Let's assume that's correct.
An engine that was light.
But I mean, we could Google this, right? The Felix Wankle rotary. Let's see when it was made here. Let's assume Wikipedia is correct. I don't like to do that. 1902. Let's go 19. That doesn't say anything about when the rotary. Oh, there he goes. Joined. Oh, geez, he was a member of radical anti-Semitic organizations. Well, let's just let's put that one aside for a moment. I don't want to go there. A member of the National Social. Okay, you know what? Let's just assume it was 1929 before we peel back this onion anymore.
Weight efficient, cheap, and easy to repair. Throughout the 1950s, he worked to develop a new engine that wasn't based on cylinders and pistons. Instead, Wankle's engine...
Okay, I'd just like to point out that the thing that we all call a rotor is actually, in engineering terms, it's still a piston. It's just we call it a rotor to avoid confusion, but it's most certainly a piston.
It's a triangular rotor and oval-shaped housing. Since then...
No. See, it's not an oval-shaped housing at all. It's an epitrochoid. And to just say it's oval is completely inaccurate. If we could I don't know how to spell it, but Wolfram Alpha has a cool epitrochoid generator. So yeah, it's made by rotating the radius of one circle around another. And they had kind of a cool generator here. Oh, animated GIFs. Nope. Might take me a sec to find it. Oh, okay, here we go. That's what I was looking for. So here's kind of how it's generated. And if we look for a Mazda Rotary style one, then if we Google up a Mazda rotor housing, Mazda rotor housing epitrochoid, hopefully there's going to be some math that someone has done that demonstrates this. Oh, Wolfram Alpha, there we go, that's kind of what I was looking for here. I've seen this before, and this is the epitrochoid. See, that is absolutely not a oval. You can see here it indents, and as the rotor orbits in an elliptical orbit, that's what creates the three different chambers. If these indents were not here, there would be no separate chambers. So we can actually exaggerate that and see what happens if there's no dents and it's just an oval. See, you don't get the chambers. The rotor starts to bloat out into a circle and it all goes away. So it's not an oval by any means.
Some even called it a spinning Dorito because of its triangular shape. Triangle shape in a rotary engine is ideal because it's mathematically the most effective configuration within that housing. With the rotary engine, the rotor revolves around the housing.
Whoa. He just said a triangular is the most efficient. Then he goes to this crazy thing.
Within that housing. With the rotary engine, the rotor revolves
that is not
around
a Mazda
Rotary.
Rotary.
All 3 points of the rotor remain in constant contact with the edge of the housing. This creates 3 separate sections
that is not a Mazda Rotary. So he's showing this. I'm not sure what rotary this is, but it's obviously some other geometry. And look, you can see that the intake port is kind of combined into the rotor here. That's what that is. It obviously lines up with an intake port and then brings it out into the chamber. But that's not a Mazda Rotary. So why are we showing it?
Piston moves around the output shaft. A small pocket of air then expands into a larger pocket to create a vacuum.
Oh, see, that's what that is. That's an interesting intake arrangement there. So again, but this is nowhere near a Mazda Rotary.
After that, air and fuel are injected into this vacuum to the intake ports of the combustion chamber.
What? Yeah, again, this is not a Mazda Rotary at all. I mean, I'm sure we all know what a Mazda Rotary is, but look, this is a Mazda Rotary right here. That is nothing at all like what he's showing here. So I don't know why he's doing that. It's just confusing and wrong.
This air and fuel mixture is then compressed against the flat side of the housing. This combustible mixture is ignited by 2 spark plugs, and then the exhaust gas.
Notice his diagram here it only shows one spark plug.
Gases are forced out at high pressure.
One
Strangely enough,
I don't think that was a spark plug.
That
was a fuel injector.
That
was some sort of diesel, maybe?
In aviation and motorbikes. The earlier version was a type of piston engine with a rotating crankcase, and they usually had an odd number of pistons, like 5, 7, or 9. But it wasn't until
Okay, what? A type of piston engine with a rotating... He's referring to a radial piston engine. Radial. Radial engine. It's a radial. It's not a rotary. Okay? These are piston engines. I think they're very cool, very compact when you're looking for a pancake shaped engine. But this is not a rotary. It's a very common mistake. And if he's making a video that is trying to explain the rotary, he should be pretty clear on that.
Decades later, that Felix Wankel came along and created the pistonless Wankel rotary engine that we know today.
But I just said the rotor was a piston.
There's been a lot of controversy around the Wankel rotary. Slowly but surely, it faded away from the car market in the 2000s. And the reason for that came down to the law, but not American or Japanese law. It was because of European law, in particular, the strict Euro 5 emissions regulations.
I mean,
because of this, Mazda had to stop
the cars
selling
were
its RX-8 in Europe after
People
2010.
balked at a 1.3 liter engine. People didn't like the torque curve.
To make matters worse, rotor engines were relatively rare, so it wasn't.
There were some reliability issues with the early RX-8s, Rotary engines were rare. Did he just say rotary engines were rare?
European law. To make matters worse, rotary engines were relatively rare, so it wasn't easy to find parts when you had to replace or repair them. And even
they were rare? Really? RX-7 production numbers. Let's see what, well, we're going to go to Wikipedia again. I mean, who knows whether this is accurate because it's Wikipedia. They're relatively rare. Yeah, see, these numbers don't make any sense because they say only 811,000 were produced between 78 and 2002, but that seems quite low to me. See, look, 78 to 85, 471,000 RX-7s produced. 85 to 92, here's another 272,000 produced, but that seems really, really low to me because, well, I mean, in the 80s and the 90s, you saw them everywhere, you know? FDs, 68,000 produced. That is not rare, okay? Rare is a 1979 Bricklin. Rare is a Lamborghini Countach. When there's almost 1 million of something produced, that's not rare. And anyone knows you could just go to Mazda and get the parts.
If you did find the right parts, then you also had to find a mechanic who knew how to fix a rotary engine.
I'll give you that.
Also,
a lot of
when it
mechanics
comes to city driving, a rotary engine has a short lifespan between rebuilds and usually lasts less than 100,000 miles. True.
Whoa, okay, wait. City driving kills a rotary and it lasts 100,000 miles in a city? That's flat out wrong. There's just no other way of saying it. No point. It's just wrong. It's an old myth.
Some Mazda RX-8 owners were able to get longer lifespans out of the rotary engines, but it was usually the same people who mainly drove their vehicles on the highway at a steady speed. By the way, the RX...
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that. Vehicles that are mainly driven on the highway last longer than those that are driven on the city. Driving on the highway is really easy compared to the city. Everything wears out less frequently.
RX-8 wasn't the only vehicle that used the rotary engine.
No,
there were others. There was even the REPU, which was also known as the Rotary Engine Pickup. So what killed the...
So he does mention other vehicles, finally, after he claimed earlier that it was just the RX-7 and the RX-8.
Rotary engine. You could say it killed itself. At its core, the rotary engine came with inherent flaws. First of all, the rotary engine usually has a low thermal efficiency because of the shape of the combustion chamber and also lower compression ratio.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely true because you have a long combustion chamber compared to this little piston, circle. Cylinder is really good for thermal efficiency. The long combustion chamber is not. That's one of the reasons Mazda used 2 spark plugs in every production rotary and 3 spark plugs in many of their race engines, like the famous 787B.
Basically, there are 2 spark plugs that ignite the air-fuel mixture. As they rotate, boom, combustion. Once the flame starts, it wants to travel out and ignite the air-fuel mixture. But here's the thing. In the rotary engine, this flame has to travel a longer distance to ignite all the mixture. That's why it's harder to ignite. Finally, it gets to the end and hits the exhaust port, but some of the air and fuel doesn't get burned. So basically, you're sending some of that...
Okay, well that's kinda accurate, kinda not. So the exhaust port's right around here below this finger. And it's true that
this flame has to travel a longer distance to ignite all the mixture.
That's right
why
there.
It's harder to ignite.
Oops,
Finally,
I missed the pause. Let's try that again.
Has to travel a longer distance.
Right there. Okay. So the exhaust port, let's say, is right about here on an engine with peripheral exhaust ports. That's all rotaries until the RX-8 when they switch to side ports. And that's absolutely the case. See, right around here where the apex seal meets the chamber, there's always a little area that traps a little bit of unburned fuel because the flame front hasn't reached that point yet. And what happens is that sweeps that unburned fuel just a little bit into the exhaust port out here into the exhaust. You end up with hydrocarbons out the exhaust, and incidentally Mazda used that with their older thermal reactor systems from, I think, okay, let's just say mid-70s to early 80s. They used those hydrocarbons into these large, big, bulbous exhaust manifolds with a heat exchanger that recirculated exhaust heat into the manifold and burned those hydrocarbons in the manifold so they didn't go out the tailpipe. And because of that, Mazda with their rotary engine was actually able to meet some of the strict 1970s emission standards without using a catalytic converter.
Mixture. That's why it's harder to ignite. Finally, it gets to the end and hits the exhaust port, but some of the air and fuel...
And I'd like to point out, though, that he was not showing these spark plugs correctly. The leading plug here, which is actually covered by this flame, fires first, and then depending on the speed of the engine, the load of the engine, the trailing plug fires, 10 degrees afterwards to ignite the rest of the mixture. Mazda has actually played with that trailing split a lot over the years, and in some cases in the RX-8, they actually fire the trailing first because it's going to give it more time to completely burn.
Doesn't get burned. So basically you're sending some of that fuel out the exhaust. That's why you're probably seeing rotary engines spitting flames out of the exhaust, because it didn't burn all the fuel within the combustion stroke.
Nope, that's... Oh, we got an ad here, so let's mute this ad. Nope, that's not why at all. You'll see rotaries spitting flames because people have removed catalytic converters, and the flames happen when you're at a wide open throttle, high load, the mixture is a little rich, then you snap the throttle closed, and what happens? That excess fuel out the exhaust. That's why you're going to get the flames. You'll never see a stock rotary spitting flames because they have catalytic converters and they're not typically tuned that rich. Also, by the way, it's a myth that rotaries run richer than other vehicles. That's not true. They run the same air-fuel ratios as other engines, but under load, they may have to run richer to keep the combustion temperatures down under high boost conditions.
Means lower thermal efficiency, less fuel economy, and higher emissions. Speaking of fuel economy, in some cases, vehicles with piston engines have more than 55% better fuel economy than cars with rotary engines.
That's because of that long chamber and the thermal efficiency. Another common problem with rotary engine has to do with the seals. The rotary engine has apex seals, face seals, and side seals. The purpose of the seals is to prevent the gas. Okay, so I don't know what a face seal is. Typically, the seals in the rotary are referred to as the apex seal. That's the one at the apexes. The side seals, the ones that are along the side, and the oil seals, which are right around the big gear here to seal the oil in. Face seals is a weird, not really used terminology.
In each chamber for mixing together. But here's the tricky part. Combustion only happens on one side. This causes a huge difference in temperature on each side. So you have metal expanding in different ways on different sides of the housing.
No, okay, so he's confused two things here. Let's go back a bit.
The problem with rotary engine has to do with the seals. The rotary engine has apex seals.
Okay, so we can kind of clearly see it here, but this should also be kind of hot here because that's the exhaust stroke. Yes, obviously, when combustion only takes place in this area of the housing, and intake only takes place in this area of the housing, it creates hot and cold spots. But that's easily taken care of just by putting more cooling channels where the heat is. It's just that simple.
Seals and side seals. Purpose of the seals is to prevent the gas in each chamber from mixing together. But here's the tricky part. Combustion only happens on one side. This causes a huge difference in temperature on each side. So you have metal expanding in different ways on different sides of the housing. And that makes it very difficult to create a good seal. Any problem in a seal means that some of the air in pocket one may leak over into another chamber.
I mean, that's true and it isn't. These are dynamic gas seals. So it's actually the pressure on both sides that keep the seals sealed. It doesn't really have a lot to do with temperature at all.
It's not to say these issues aren't addressable. There are a few ways to make them more reliable. For example, all combustion engines, including piston-based ones, all face the same issue of carbon deposits. This occurs in the process of combustion, and you can't avoid it.
So wait, you went from this is a challenge to make the seals reliable to carbon deposits?
The natural byproduct, which is carbon. But in rotary engines, carbon buildup is a more severe problem. Carbon buildup causes pre-ignition.
Okay, So this image here is really odd to me because if you've ever taken apart a rotary engine, you never see carbon on the housings, ever. The carbon builds up in the bowls of the rotors. The reason carbon doesn't build up on the housings is because they're constantly being scraped by the apex seal. There's no way for carbon to build up there. The diagram, it's just wrong.
Which causes the engine to jerk backwards, and the corner seals can get so flat you can't.
Wait. Okay, we gotta go back again.
Carbon buildup is a more severe problem. Carbon buildup causes pre-ignition, which causes the engine to jerk backwards, and the corner seals can get so flat.
It causes the engine to jerk backwards. No, again, that's not true at all. Okay, so pre-ignition in a rotary does not happen due to carbon. Period. Pre-ignition in a rotary happens due to lean mixtures, typically caused by high boost. And I think jerking backwards is a way of saying that pre-ignition causes opposing forces on the rotor. And it's very bad for apex seals. That's what will break your seals.
Flat, you can't even remove them. And then carbon buildup is a more severe problem. Carbon buildup causes pre-ignition, which causes the engine to jerk backwards, and the corner seals can get so flat you can't even remove them. And then
the corner seals can get so flat you can't even remove them? No, that's not how it works at all. Rotary engine corner seal. Okay, let's oh yeah, here we go, Mastrix. Okay, Mastrix's site's kind of slow. Okay, there's a corner seal. So the way this works is this sits in a little corner pocket of the rotor. Mazda Rotor. Whoops. Stupid with the autocomplete there. Mazda Rotor. Find me a bunch of brake rotors. Okay, here's just an image here of a rotor. You see a rotor? Here's a rotor. Okay, so the corner seals sit in the corner here. In fact, oddly enough, there's a broken corner seal in that rotor, so don't buy that rotor. If it has a broken corner seal, some very bad things happen to that engine. But the corner seal sits here. It is a solid metal seal with potentially a rubber plug in the center, depending on the year. These do not flatten at all. They don't flatten. There's nothing to flatten. It would take a hydraulic press to crush them. I think what he might be referring to when he says flatten is corner seal springs. Go back to math. And if we look at the corner seal spring, yeah, that's a little spring that is kind of like that, and pushes the corner seal up. That can absolutely flatten, but what's going to flatten those is not pre-ignition. What's going to flatten those is long-term high EGT. So running real lean with lots of timing over a few thousand kilometers is going to cause those springs to relax. But that won't stop the engine from running. That's just going to cause hard starting because those seals are gas seals. So once gas gets under the seal, it pushes it up against the housing. In other words, what he's saying is kind of mixed up. He really should be talking about apex seal damage with pre-ignition, not corner seal damage.
Rotor wobbles. One solution.
Wait, sorry, what? Did he just say the rotor wobbles?
Carbon. But in rotary engines, carbon buildup is a more severe problem. Carbon buildup causes pre-ignition, which causes the engine to jerk backwards, and the corner seals can get so flat you can't even remove them. And then the rotor wobbles.
The rotor wobbles.
E85.
The rotor wobbles. Okay, we got to go back again.
To jerk backwards, and the corner seals.
It's impossible for the rotor to wobble. Look at that. I keep pointing at the screen as if you're going to see it. Look at that. The rotor is wobbling. That cannot happen unless something very, very, very bad has broken in the engine. The position of the rotor is set by the eccentric shaft and the stationary gear. It is forced to follow that elliptical orbit unless one of those things breaks. And you'd know if one of those things broke. So broken corner seals does not cause the rotor to wobble. He may be mixed up and maybe referring to, let's bring up a picture of a rotor again. Mazda Rotary. He may be very confused and is probably talking about the thrust surface of the rotor. So if we look at a rotor here, here's a good one, a little small, but whatever. If we look at a rotor here, this surface right here is the thrust surface. And if it gets damaged or broken in some way, and that's going to be due to chronic or catastrophic loss of lubricating oil, that thrust surface can wear down, and that's what both the end plates are pressed against, with the rotor running in the center. So if that thrust surface gets worn, it allows the rotor to do that. Very, very bad. I don't think I've ever actually seen that or heard of it happening. It's not to say it couldn't happen, but it is not going to happen because of this.
And then the rotor wobbles. One solution is E85, which is a blend of 85% ethanol and 15% gasoline. You could also try pre-mixing the oil using something like Valvoline VR1 2050 full.
Wait, what? Okay, E85 is not going to stop pre-ignition, definitely not due to carbon deposits, which can't happen anyway, but it's not going to stop pre-ignition unless you're in a turbocharged scenario with high boost that will actually benefit from the cooling capability of the alcohol as it evaporates in the combustion chamber, or sorry, as it evaporates out of the injector. Sorry, let's be technical, is atomized out of the injector. It's not going to make any difference in any scenario other than that, and you're actually going to get poorer fuel economy because of the alcohol.
It's a blend of 85% ethanol, 15% gasoline.
Really weird about
you can
oil.
also try pre-mixing.
Yeah, we know it. Okay, we know what E85 is. You don't have to define it.
One solution is E85, which is a blend of 85% ethanol, 15% gasoline. You can also try pre-mixing the oil using something like Valvoline VR1 2050 full synthetic oil to
wait, pre-mixing with VR1 2050 oil? Is that even a two-stroke oil? Valvoline VR1 2050. What is that? Is that a high-performance racing high zinc motor oil? So this is not a two-stroke oil. This is a crankcase oil. Yeah. This is a synthetic crankcase oil. Okay. Just want to make sure I'm right on that. Valvoline VR1 2050 4-cycle racing oil. Okay, yeah. So this is a 2050 crankcase oil, and he's suggesting that you premix your fuel with. Let's be specific here. He's suggesting you premix your E85 with VR1 2050 synthetic racing crankcase oil. Nope, that's just wrong. I mean, okay, let's premixing is when you mix a little bit of oil in with your gasoline, because the Rotary uses a metering oil pump which injects a little bit of oil into the combustion chamber to lubricate the apex seals. Premixing is not going to give you anything in a car with a properly working metering oil pump, okay? Unless your car is highly modified or you're wailing on it at the track, you don't need to premix. And if you do premix, you need to use a TC3W two-stroke oil. TC3W, yeah, two-stroke oil. Like a TC, there we go. Yeah, so TCW3, I always say that wrong. This is a two-stroke oil designed for fuel injection systems. If you're going to premix your rotary, that's what you use. You do not dump crankcase oil, especially synthetic 2050, because synthetic oils don't burn cleanly. You don't dump that into the fuel tank and expect it to do any good things for your car. Use a two-stroke oil that is designed to lubricate and designed to combust and designed to be compatible with fuel injection systems.
Lubricate the bearings, the E-shafts, and the gears on the sides of the rotor.
Wait, what?
Like Valvoline VR1 2050 full synthetic oil to lubricate the bearings, the E-shafts, and the gears on the sides of the rotors. Then disconnect and block off the oil.
So he's insinuating, maybe, okay.
Is a blend of 85% ethanol and 15%
I just want to make sure he said premix.
You could also try premixing the oil using something like Valvoline
so he just
2050
has no
full
idea what
synthetic
premixing
oil
does.
to lubricate the bearings, the E-shafts, and the gears on the sides of the
Okay.
rotors.
So first of all, that's not a rotary bearing. That to me looks like the bearing on an axle CV joint. So in fact, it's not a bearing. That is a CV joint. Let's be clear, that is not a bearing in any way. I don't know what these are supposed to represent, but these are not Mazda stationary gears. They kind of look like Mazda stationary gears, but I don't know what this seal is in here, what seal this is. These almost look like parts of a differential. I don't know what they are, but they are not what he says they are. And more to the point, premix oil has no part in lubricating the eccentric shaft, the rotor bearings, the gears, etc., etc. That is the crankcase oil that is delivered through a pressurized oiling system like any conventional engine. Nothing to do with premix. And I always run 2050 on my RXO.
Then disconnect and block off the oil metering pump system and instead try using your own premixed oil instead.
Wait, okay.
E-shafts and the gears on the sides of the rotors. Then disconnect and block off the oil metering pump system and instead try
disconnect and block off the oil metering pump system. He's kinda got this right. Kinda. So this line here with the X represents the metering oil nozzle that sprays into the intake port. But I don't know what this is because there's no metering oil nozzle here on any Mazda Rotary engine. It would actually be located here, and that's the that's the nozzle that dribbles onto the rotor housing. And I don't know what this is here. There's not one at the bottom. That's nothing. And again, mixing E85 and synthetic motor oil, nope.
Your own premixed oil instead.
Nope.
Despite its flaws, the rotary engine has advantages. For example, the rotary engine really packs a punch for its size. There honestly aren't many flaws. The rotary engine has advantages. For example, the rotary engine really packs a punch for its size.
Yep.
There honestly aren't many naturally aspirated piston engines that can compete with the rotary engine.
Probably
for
some
example,
now.
a rotary-powered Mazda RX-8 can pump out 174 brake horsepower per liter. Compare that to the 8-liter quad-turbo 16-cylinder Bugatti Veyron.
What kind of comparison is that? Why are we comparing a 1.3-liter naturally aspirated rotary engine to an 8-liter quad turbo? The key there is quad turbo engine. I mean, once you add boost, all comparisons are out the door, right? You should be comparing it to a 1.3 or a 2.6-liter naturally aspirated engine. So, like, is there a 2.6-liter piston engine? This is a random Google. I don't know. This probably isn't helping. Race short block. No, this is important. This comparison is not valid.
Which pumps out 148 brake horsepower per liter. Rotary engines
that's a completely different application. You can't compare them.
Are very efficient at making power.
Yep.
Remember too that the rotary engine.
And again, what is this engine? This is not a Mazda Rotary. He should not be using this, which appears to be some sort of diesel, because I don't see any spark plugs. He should not be using this engine.
It doesn't reciprocate like piston engines. Instead, it just spins in one direction.
I
so
don't know
it means no vibrations in your car. And you get a quieter engine and a smoother, more balanced ride. The rotary engine is also smaller than a piston engine. It allows an EV maker to optimize it.
For the record, I can pick up a 13B short block myself. But there's no way in hell I can pick up a LS1 short block.
first, deciding where to place the rotary engine, and the generator it helps to turn. So you can optimize the car's interior space since batteries aren't crammed in as an afterthought.
Sure, or you can just put a whole bunch more batteries in and just skip the whole plug-in hybrid thing altogether. Just a thought.
Mazda's been a pioneer in a rotary engine before things tapered down. But now, I don't know if you remember, but way back when Mazda first announced its iconic rotary engines were making a comeback, the fans got really excited. But then Mazda clarified that the engine would come in the form of a range extender for an electric SUV. Mazda unveiled its latest version of...
Which is fine. I mean, who cares? You use it for that purpose. I'm sure it'll work fine as long as it's reliable, and I'm just concerned about how they're going to keep the noise under control because, as is often said, the most efficient way of converting fuel into noise is the rotary engine.
Of the rotary engine at its MX-30E Skyactiv REV. Boy, that's a mouthful. According to reports, it will use a two-piece apex seal design. The rotary design will be configured like a generator and expected to extend the vehicle's drive. Announced its iconic rotary engines were making a comeback, the fans got really excited. But then Mazda clarified that the engine would come in the form of a range extender for an electric SUV. Mazda unveiled its latest version of the rotary engine at its MX-30E Skyactiv REV. Boy, that's a mouthful.
Yeah,
according to reports, it will use a two-piece apex seal design.
Well, of course it'll use a two-piece apex seal design. Why is that even worth mentioning? All Mazda Rotaries since... the FD have used a two-piece apex seal design. So Mazda started out with a single-piece design in really early engines, which was a pain in the ass because you had to clearance each seal for each corner. Then they went to a two-piece seal design that carried all the way until 1985. And in 1985 they went to a three-piece seal design. Mazda three-piece seal. Let's see if we can find one. Nobody sells them anymore. Oh, here's one. Oh, look, Atkins has some new old stock. So they went to a three-piece apex seal design with this bottom piece, and the idea being that it provides slightly better sealing because it allows the top of the seal to dynamically move a little bit back and forth to compensate for wear in the rotor and to compensate for different expansion rates. But Mazda only ran those seals from 86 to 95, so I guess 3 years of the FD. Then they switched to a two-piece seal because the three-piece seals were beating up the rotors. That aforementioned sliding action of the top piece of the seal would V out the top of the rotor, and as that part of the seal wore down and down and down, eventually it would just roll out because it didn't have enough vertical height. So there was premature failures with those seals. So as of, I guess, 95, Mazda went back to the two-piece seal, which carried all through the RX-8. So I don't know why he's mentioning it's a two-piece apex seal design, like that's somehow key.
Rotary design will be configured like a generator and expected to extend the vehicle's driving range up to 373 miles.
Cool.
At the end of the day, it really is just a range extender.
Yeah.
And a far
How are you
cry
going to deal with the heat and the noise? If it works, it works.
from the conventional rotary engine that Mazda fans were hoping for. But actually, this too may change, and sooner than you think. This past June, it was reported that Mazda had filed 6 brand new patents for the Japanese Patent Office. These patents detail new designs for a two-rotor Wankel rotary engine.
Well, Mazda's always filing patents. I mean, always. All manufacturers are. Oftentimes, they develop a tiny improvement on something, then they file a patent on it to make sure no one else can do that.
So the obvious question now is...
I'm glad they're still working on the Rotary, though, and still actively filing patents on it.
Will we see a successor to the RX-7, RX-8 sports car?
Maybe.
Well, 3 of the 6 patents specifically relate to the design of the rotors themselves.
Oh, we got another ad.
The 6 patents
What's that?
specifically relate
Is that
to the
big
design
thing
of the
down there?
rotors themselves to improve the fuel efficiency of a rotary engine. Each outer face of the rotor has new designs with the recess cut out in different width, length, and depth. These
Okay, well, Mazda, this is not the first time Mazda did that. There were several 12A models that had non-uniform rotor bowls and several 13B models, and I believe the Renesis engine has non-uniform rotor bowls. Mazda has flipped back and forth throughout the years because they both say and they don't say it makes much of a difference. But hey, any little bit counts.
Shape so the recesses would help accelerate and control the flame growth. It would also prevent any additional heat and noise from being generated with incomplete combustion. Also,
it would prevent additional heat and noise from being generated with incomplete combustion. Neither one of those things generate noise. Well, okay. If you have a lot of incomplete combustion, it can generate quite a noise out the tailpipe. But we're talking about only like percentages of hydrocarbons here. It does not generate any additional heat. It does not generate any additional noise. In fact, incomplete combustion will generate less heat than complete combustion, because I'll give you the hint: incomplete.
Instead of just having a rectangular recess, in these patents, Mazda produces a wider, deeper recess at the center of the rotor.
Yep.
But the leading and trailing edges have a shallower, narrower recess.
Yeah, they've done that
and this
before.
means a depressurization and repressurization.
Wouldn't surprise me if the RX-8 has those. RX-8 rotor. Let's just see what the Google says here. Yeah, look at that. RX-8 rotor, and you can clearly tell that is a non-uniform rotor bowl. Yep, she's wider and deeper here, and narrower and shallower there. And look at these little indents here. So Mazda's been doing that for a long time.
Of the fuel-air mixture can be possible, and that in turn would decrease and increase
who is this woman anyway? Look at that smile, look at those eyebrows. She is one intense chick.
Ability of the fuel. The other three patents focus mostly on the air and...
What's he looking at? He's just looking down at his nose? And I don't know what to say about that. You can't pick a more flattering picture?
Intake structure of the rotary engine. While all three specifically mention a single rotor engine, they can probably be applied to dual rotor applications too. One of these patents explains an
I don't know, because patents are pretty specific, you know. It'll be something like the use of this, in this, in this, in this, and this. You know, for application in this, in this, and this. So unless you read the patents, you can't necessarily say that it's usable in a dual rotor. It may be usable in a dual rotor, but the patents as filed might not cover that. Someone else can look up the patents. I'm not going to bother.
Intake structure that could mix intake air with exhaust fumes. The other two patents explain how it would
go back.
Engine. While all three specifically mention a single rotor engine, they can probably be applied to dual rotor applications too. One of these patents explains an air intake structure that could mix intake air with exhaust fumes.
Amazing! An air intake structure that can mix air intake with exhaust fumes. I think Mazda's just invented EGR. GR. Well, exhaust gas recirculation. EGR has been a standard in automobiles for a very long time. Introducing spent exhaust gases into the intake lowers combustion temperature and helps reduce oxides of nitrogen.
Patents explain how it would attach to the engine. Also, they explain how the EGR tube would be constructed to be more rigid. This would hopefully suppress...
Well, I'm glad they patented a rigid EGR tube. Lord knows I've been just completely flummoxed with my previous non-rigid EGR tubes.
Vibration of the intake manifold and allows smoother airflow. Anyway, the 6th latest patent filing sends a clear message. Mazda's trying to fix the biggest problems with the rotary engine. So yes, a rotary powered...
So wait, these patents say that Mazda is trying to fix the major problems with the rotary engine, changing the shape of the rotor bowls, a different EGR setup, a way of fastening a rotary engine to a motor generator, and then 3 other patents that weren't mentioned. That's fixing the problems with the rotary engine?
Mazda sports car might arrive sooner than you think. Recently, the 12-rotor engine was built in a home garage by Tyson Garvin.
Wait. Oh, sorry. Go back.
The biggest problems with the rotary engine. So yes, a rotary-powered Mazda sports car might arrive sooner than you think. Recently, the 12-rotor engine was built in a home garage by Tyson Garden. He's an endurance powerboat racer. Now, this monster engine stands out for many reasons. First of all, one bank of rotors spins back and...
See, I've been in the rotary game for a long time. I remember that. That was like 2015 or something. And it was posted to the RX-7 forum. Let me see if I can find it. RX-7 Club, 12-rotor engine, if I can type correctly. It was posted to the Old School and Other Rotary. And look at that, it's March 8th, 2011. So this is recent. This is recent, March 8th, 2011. Big Yellow Cat, that's the guy. Yeah, I remember because I actually sent some PMs. We sent some PMs back and forth between one another about the engine. Yeah, he had his wife model the eccentric shaft there. And here's the housings that he did. They look like Mickey Mouse ears. And I'm about to get some ad overload here. Come on. So I remember when he did this. Yeah. And the idea being that picture the engine arranged like Mickey Mouse ears, a circle, and then two more at the top. And there were 4 rotors on each one of those rows, and the ears were connected just by large gears. So it's pretty cool. 2011 though, I wouldn't say that's recent. And you know, the reason I'm scrolling down is, oh, look at that, look at it, see, 2011. Look who replied to that thread. I knew I've seen it before. Injectors and fuel rails are inside the intake, so it'll be a clean look. Incidentally, a friend and I did that with the peripheral port 12A about that time, and it was pretty cool. So yeah, so this is recent, very recent.
Counter rotate.
And he intended it for offshore powerboats. His whole thing was, people spend so much money on these offshore powerboats that they don't care what the engine costs. Like, it's immaterial. They'll spend 80 grand on an engine.
A choice of how you fire the rotors. Whether it's 2 firing at a time on different sides, on each side, or 12 individual firings, it's up to you.
Oh, you'd never fire it as 12 individual firings. You would phase the rotors so that they're always firing opposite to maintain a natural balance. It's not up to you. And to change that firing order requires changing the eccentricity of the shaft. So you'd have to physically change the position of the lobes on the eccentric shaft. Let's find a Mazda eccentric here. I probably should have said Mazda eccentric shaft. But yeah, see the position of these lobes? In order to change where the rotor is in the orbit, you have to change that position of the lobe. So in order for the user to change it, they would have to completely remachine the eccentric shaft.
Back and center rotors counterbalance each other.
Yes,
that means that you don't need counterweights. The gears in the motor are connected in a similar way to what you see in a clock tower. Think Big Ben. And get this, there's only one oil drain on this entire 12-rotor engine. Oh, and did I mention...
Well, who cares if there's one oil drain? Oh my God, there's only one oil drain. That seems like a key feature. Every engine I've ever had has only had one oil drain. Except the Mazda R-type transmission actually has 2 oil drains, but that's a transmission, not an engine. But one oil drain, the innovation.
They can output 2,000 horsepower at idle.
Sir, wait, what? 2,000, okay, let's go back.
Oil drain on this entire 12-rotor engine. Oh, and did I mention they can output 2,000 horsepower at idle?
First of all, I didn't realize how amazed that lady was that there was only one oil drain.
The gears in the motor are connected in a similar way to what you see in a clock tower. Think Big Ben. And get this, there's only one oil drain on this entire...
Look, and she's even pointing to it. I guess they're just really frustrated with engines that have more than one oil drain.
Engine. Oh, and did I mention they can output 2,000 horsepower at idle?
Sorry, 2,000 horsepower at idle? I don't think he knows what idle means. Idle means the engine is producing the minimum amount of power necessary to spin the engine over. It is idling. It is using the minimum amount of fuel. It is producing the minimum amount of heat. It is pulling in the minimum amount of air, expelling the minimum amount of exhaust. It is idling. It is only moving its own weight. 2,000 horsepower at idle would mean that that engine requires 2,000 horsepower to spin its own weight. It just makes no sense. Those top fuel dragsters need that kind of power at idle, but only because they're spinning a monstrous roots blower that takes multiple hundreds of horsepower just to spin.
Supposedly, if you feed the engine with race fuel and methanol, the engine can achieve over 5,000 horsepower.
5,000 horsepower. That sounds about right. I mean, Mazda was able to easily pull 1,000 horsepower out of a four-rotor. The famous 787B was detuned from about 1,200 horsepower down to 800 horsepower, or whatever it was for the race. So yeah, absolutely, I believe 5,000 horsepower. But I mean, 2,000 to say 2,000 horsepower at idle just indicates you don't know what idle means.
There's no hard proof yet, but in theory it could. Not only.
Well, as far as I know, the engine hasn't really been built, or if it's been built and oh, you know what? I lied. It was built. It was later in that thread. So if you want to read the whole thing, geez, skincare. If you want to read the whole thing, the thread is called 12 rotor engine. 12 rotor engine. It's on rx7club.com in the old school and other rotary. And I believe there were some YouTube videos. Geez, I guess I talked a lot in this thread. Oh, look at that. I even mentioned the fact that we did the peripheral port 12A with the interior injectors. There was some video of it running, but I don't think it ever actually made it past the initial testing.
Biggest rotor engine to date, but it's also one of the first billet
engines.
Oh, wait,
it's not the biggest rotor engine.
Rotor engine. Oh, and did I mention it can output 2,000 horsepower at idle? Supposedly, if you feed the engine with race fuel and methanol, the engine can achieve
race fuel and methanol? I thought race fuel was methanol. What does race fuel and methanol mean?
5,000 horsepower. There's no hard proof yet, but in theory it could. Not only is this the world's biggest rotor.
It's the world's biggest rotary engine. Oh, come on. We've all seen that picture of the Curtiss-Wright rotary. Now, this is a big rotary engine. See if I can find it here. Yeah. When your rotor is that big, that's a big rotary engine. There it is. Yeah, see, that's a big rotary engine. I guess, though, it's not a rotary today. So, I don't know. Maybe it is the biggest rotary today.
First billet engines out there, meaning that it's not cast from liquid nor forged from heated metal, but rather it's made from a single block of engine to date. But it's also one of the first billet engines out there.
It's one of the first billet engines out there. That's absolutely not true at all. There are multiple manufacturers that are making billet rotary components. Billet Rotary Store. I think there's an Australian company that does it. Ships. I don't know. Pack Performance, yeah, they do billet stuff. Oh, Pulse Performance, that's what I was thinking of. Pulse Performance. There's so many billet rotary engines made nowadays. Billet Mazda Rotary. I'm not spelling Mazda right, but you get the idea. Google will fix that for me. Yeah, here's a billet rotary. Look, billet rotors, billet 20B. Look, there's even a YouTube, but full cast versus billet. I mean, you can get billet stuff for the rotary commonly these days. In fact, that's often the cheapest way to build a 20B because 20B parts are just worth their weight in gold these days.
Meaning that it's not cast from liquid nor forged from heated metal, but rather it's made from a single block of material that's machined down on a seat.
Okay, I'd like to point out that billet means that it was machined from a billet of metal, and that billet was produced quite typically by casting the billet. Then it was rolled to remove any casting flaws, and a metallurgist can speak to that. But billet just means it was machined out of one piece, one billet of metal, and that term is just widely misused these days. I mean, I'm sure you've seen something that is labeled as billet that is so obviously sandcast.
CNC mill. We're talking about ultimate precision and strength. But like any engine, this 12-rotor engine is far from flawless. Sure, it may look cool, but it's not perfect. Here are some of the problems with 12-rotor engines. First of all, it generates a lot of heat. Just look at the size of it. Its radiator has been likened to a massive ocean. That's how big it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course it generates a lot of heat. There's 12 freaking rotors. So a 4-rotor is typically 2.6 liters, and when you multiply that by 3, you get a whole bunch of liters, and you're burning a lot of fuel and you're making a lot of power. You have to get rid of that heat. That is an offshore powerboat engine. So he's not lying when he says the radiator has been likened to an ocean. Because on those offshore powerboats, on almost every boat, you're just pumping water through it. The water the boat is in. That's how you cool the engine.
To make it a more practical, mass-produced product, it would be better to standardize how wide the rotors are. By doing that, the rotors can be
Wait, what?
Another issue is the width of the rotor. The width varies. To make it a more practical,
the width of the rotor doesn't vary. I don't know where he got that from. It would make there would be no reason for the width of the rotor to vary. And if you go back on that Mazda, on that forum thread, there's no mention of the rotor varying in width. There's no advantage at all to varying the width of the rotor, okay? For all of the reasons that I think he's just about to say.
Produced product. It would be better to standardize how wide the rotors are. By doing that, the rotors can be interchanged anywhere in the engine. As well, the aluminum is a lot weaker on the two sides where the gear will experience most of the force, which is another area that could be improved.
What do you mean the aluminum is weaker? Is he intimately aware about the design of this engine that the rest of us aren't? Where's he getting that from? Or is he just getting it from that render there? That makes it look like
the aluminum is a lot weaker on the two sides.
The aluminum is weaker because I don't.
Force, which is another.
I'm not really seeing that at all, just from this non-particularly detailed rendering. Honestly, I think he just made it up like he did much of this video.
That could be improved. But now you tell me, are you interested in seeing the rotary engine make its big comeback? Or do you think it deserves to stay buried in a graveyard of old car technology? Please share by commenting below. If you like this video,
old car technology. I think Scotty Kilmer may have crawled out of a graveyard of old car technology based on this video. And that's it. I mean, this guy has 5.92 million subscribers, and how many videos does he have? He has 5,300 video, a mechanic for 56 years. Draw your own conclusions, I guess.